Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Monday, June 5th. Yes, I said Monday, June 5th, 2023. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. You've seen them on a Thursday. You saw them on a Tuesday. Yes, they work on a Monday. Bill Kurelic and Mark Porter are here. There's been some scheduling changes. Dave will be here tomorrow. He has some stuff to take care of, so I am filling in with my guys here. One thing we need to go over real quickly, we did this last week, it's very important. If you are watching the show on YouTube and are not a subscriber, please press pause and hit the subscribe button. If you are a podcaster, please hit the follow button. That way, this podcast will be delivered right to you. Subscription-wise, either way, podcast for YouTube or the podcast system you use, be it Stitcher or the Apple, we need you to subscribe or follow. It helps us tremendously on the back end. It does wonders for the show. Now, algorithmically, and that was hard for me to say out loud, I'm not really sure why it does. I just know that I need everybody who wants to participate in this show and enjoy it, subscribe or follow. Boom, that's taken care of. Now, the Dean has rolled several prominent crystal balls towards Columbus, and we are going to break down both of them right now. Since the last show, Tavien St. Clair, a quarterback from Ohio, crystal ball from Bill. If you felt a little something in the air when he rolled that, we all did. And then a wide receiver from the DMV, Elijah Moore, out of Good Counsel High School in Olney, Maryland, also after a visit this weekend. So let's start with this. Tavien St. Clair making a run at the 2024 class, prospect we talk about the most on this show. He's done nothing to hurt that with the offers he's added and the crystal ball. So since we last convened, the Louisiana State University and Alabama offered Tavien St. Clair just to make everything a little more interesting. And then Bill rolled the crystal ball down there. Let's talk about that, Bill. Why you rolled the crystal ball? I was actually a little bit surprised. In fact, when Bill rolls a crystal ball, sometimes I nod my head. This one, I actually reached out to him to make sure we were on track, and he said, oh, yeah. So, Bill, bring us back to it, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I'll go back a little bit. Before Tavian was even offered, I had been saying that I thought that there are three quarterbacks that could end up in the Ohio State as the Ohio State 2025 quarterback. Then Tavian got offered, and I said that one of those three quarterbacks is going to be the guy. I really felt confident. We talked about this on the show last, Tuesday, Thursday, whichever day that was, that they had offered now Tavien St. Clair, Ryan Montgomery, and Bryce Underwood. And I felt strongly and still do feel strongly that one of those three is going to be the guy in this Ohio State class. The guy with the momentum right now is, in my mind, is Tavien St. Clair. He worked out for Corey Dennis at a practice at the end of May and was extremely impressive, so much so that they said, there's no reason to wait any longer on this guy. It's time to offer him. He was that impressive. And I'll say Mark has been on this boat for quite some time, talking about Tavien St. Clair and just how good he is. He showed Corey Dennis in person exactly that. Prior to that, at the Elite 11 Regional in Massillon, Ryan Day was there and watched as Tavian threw and was certainly obviously impressed. So he's had two chances in the past, say, month or so to impress Ohio State, and he did that with flying colors. So, I think the guy with the momentum right now is Tavien St. Clair, and I crystal balled him to Ohio State. As far as Elijah Moore.
Hold on a sec, Bill. Let's finish up on I want to get Mark's comments on the Tavien St. Clair thing real quick. What's the vibe in Ohio, Mark, now that I think we went through at least the beginning of the cycle? The public view was that Montgomery was out in front. He had the Ohio State offer. frankly, he's got a last name that's very recognizable given his older brother status. And then St. Clair made the move. Now, you were on top of that earlier, as well you should be, considering the fact it's kind of your job. But you aren't surprised by what's going on. And the people around you that have talked to you about this when they've heard our show aren't surprised.
Yeah, and I'll take you back 1 year from last Friday. Last Friday night, I was at Toledo's camp, their Friday Night Lights camp, and I think I've started off every June at a Toledo Friday Night Lights camp. Tavien St. Clair was the show at that camp 1 year ago. College coaches, maybe D2, that were the quarterback coaches for the camp, as they were working it again this year, I go, you remember last year at this time, there was an Ohio State quarterback working out here, and no one really, perked up or whatever. Did I lose you guys there for a second? But yeah, like we watched him last year, and he was the show. And I was joking this year. I'm like, I wonder if we'll have a future Ohio State guy working out here that no one's talking about, that no one really cares about. But last year, I walked away from that camp thinking, boy, this kid's really got something to him. He spins it. They talked about what a great baseball player he was again, and what a great pitcher, and what an arm. So when I went to see him, I think it was week 5 or 6 last year, I came right to the podcast. I'd almost like to go back to that podcast and see exactly how I worded it, because I remember being really strong opinion that, hey, this kid needs to be seen as eyeballs. Kind of like the same way this year I'm saying maybe that Justin Hill at Winton Woods needs to be seen on the same level as Sonny Styles and some of those, the Hicks kid. We sometimes when you see kids, but now that Bill has seen him, and I guarantee what I did and then what Bill did is the same thing that Ryan Day did. Ryan Day probably saw him at the Elite 11 and said, hey, Corey, go up there and see if what I was seeing was right, because this kid really looked like he could do it. And I bet you when they came back and they said, yeah, we both saw the same thing, that's what spiraled it into an offer. And me knowing the college business the way I do, once that Ohio State offer was fired to him, oh boy, Alabama's going to rewatch him. That Elite 11 tape is available for all of those big-time colleges. I bet you there were a lot of programs going to that tape, because that's all they had on him. They didn't come in to see him like Corey did at his school. The MAC had seen him, other Big Ten schools had seen him, but these SEC schools aren't making a one trip up until they know there's something to bite on. Well, they were late to the party. Ohio State beat them to it, but I think there's going to be a lot more national interest in him. And last week when we did the podcast, I'm like, wow, these kids, saying they're going to wait a year to commit. Some of these bigger offers put a little steam in those sails, because how do you not take a trip down to Alabama? How do you not take a trip to some of these other places? Because they are recruiting equals to Ohio State. I mean, they're the big boys on the block. There's only 4 or 8 of them in the whole country. So, yeah, these kids may do a little shopping before they commit. But I still think, and Bill may know that this race may end sooner than we think, because there's a lot of pressure for someone to be at QB, university, with the way the quarterbacks are coming out of there.
So it's kind of interesting now. Ryan Montgomery has a crazy offer list, including Georgia. St. Clair has a crazy offer list, including Alabama. So we've covered all our bases here in terms of stress looking elsewhere. What is the recruiting outlook for St. Clair going forward? I know he's got some visits planned.
You're reading my mind, Dan.
As Mark, I want to do, Bill.
As Mark was talking, I was jotting a couple things down. He was kind of reminding me of a couple things that need to be addressed, and you just hit on it. One of the big things is, what's the kind of plan going forward now with Tavian and what they expect? And first of all, Mark mentioned baseball. He is a really good baseball player. He's a good basketball player too for that. He's a good athlete, period, a great athlete. He's not going to play baseball anymore. It's for the time being football and basketball, and eventually it's not going to be basketball. It's going to be football. He's going to be an early grad. I'm speaking of Tavian. So, he's going to move forward with football. And as far as moving forward with the visits, after I saw him in person on Wednesday at that 7-on-7, I said that he is going to visit LSU this weekend, which was this past weekend now. And I said, LSU is going to offer him on that visit, and they did. I also mentioned that he was going to camp at Alabama, and that's coming up still. But Alabama, they're seeing these offers come in, as Mark talked about, and they're thinking, we don't want to be the last of the table. So they did not wait until he got to camp. He's going to be at Mississippi State June 6th, which I believe, I lose my track of days sometimes, but that is tomorrow. He's going to be at Mississippi State tomorrow. He's going to be at Alabama the next day. But Alabama saw LSU jump in. They saw Ohio State jump in, just like Mark talked about. And they just said, no reason to wait anymore. They jumped in with an offer. So he'll be at Alabama this week. He's also going to go to Michigan. And I think anybody that would be shocked by Michigan offering isn't following things very closely here. I expect them to offer him when he gets there. He scheduled another visit to Ohio State. He's going to be at Ohio State on June 15th. Another chance for him and Corey Dennis and Ryan Day to all get together or see him throw and all that. And they don't need to see him throw anymore, but they will. So we'll be at Ohio State June 15th. That's a one-day camp. He'll be back at Ohio State June 21st for the Montgomery St. Clair battle number 2. It's a 7-on-7 team event. So that'll be very interesting. But it's moving quickly. And because of that, and talking to everybody involved here, I think Tavian is going to be the first one of the 3. This is just my opinion, between Underwood, himself, and Montgomery. I think he's going to be the first one to pull the trigger, so to speak, and make a decision. And I know Tennessee moved the needle for him, and I'm sure that Alabama's going to move the needle some too. I just, though, have a hard time seeing him say no to Ohio State, thus the crystal ball.
Bill, Mika Hanna has a question for you, and he was reading my mind, or she, I might add. Does that mean we'll be out on Underwood?
If Tavian takes that spot in the class, then yes, because I don't see much of any way that there's going to be 2 of the very top quarterbacks in the country from the same class in the Ohio State class. I just don't see 2 of those 3 both jumping into the Ohio State class. So, yeah, if Tavian takes that spot, I don't see Underwood being in the Ohio State class. And now, things can change sometimes. I mean, hey, maybe Ohio State loses the loser of the quarterback battle, and maybe they need an extra quarterback, and maybe one of these guys wants to jump in after that. Things can change. It's recruiting, but I just don't see that happening.
There's a factor here that we always bring up. There's a bag of money somewhere for a quarterback. And at the end of the day, that could change any of these kids' mind tomorrow. I think if you're one of the top quarterbacks in the country, what's the going rate for these guys right now? I mean, you guys know what that is? That's the most important question.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we haven't really got into that because it's kind of a hidden thing, but I've talked to some college coaches. Linebackers are going for $500,000. Who's got the $1 million bag for one of these guys that says, you know what? I know you're from Ohio, and I know you'd love to go there, but here's a couple $100,000 house, and here's a place on the water, and come down here. So this whole game isn't traditionally the game that's been played, and I think the wild west of NIL is going to rear its ugly head, and the quarterback position is the marquee position where, if you're going to spend it, what did Quinn Ewers get? What did they give the kid at Tennessee a year ago? One of these kids is going to get the bag, so to speak.
Yeah. Here's my
and I know we're going to go back into it's quarterback you, and you're going to make it in the NFL and all that stuff, but this position is getting upfront money. They're the one that's
The quarterback at Ohio State, while he's at Ohio State, makes a lot of money. So I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm
not saying that's not
positions that I would be worried about. I don't think there's any chance that money's going to play into this account. I agree with what you're saying, generally speaking, but when it comes to this particular position at this school, even beyond the.
And I don't mean to make it seem like we can't match anybody with whatever. And Stroud was doing very well. And I'm sure they'll bring that up. That the next guy will do even better. as this goes forward. I mean, that's the nature of this beast. But as Bill was pointing out, anything can happen. In the back of my brain, I'm like, yeah, that bag of money, to wherever it may go, may be very, very powerful. And that's just a new factor.
Look, theoretically, you're right in that if they let's say hypothetically, because Alabama is going through some issues at quarterback right now. I don't understand why people are talking about Ohio State's quarterback situation with more stress than Alabama's. Go look at their depth chart, and they just took a running quarterback in the transfer portal that couldn't start it. That got beat out at Notre Dame, but I digress. If someone came in with the Brinks truck offer, decided, okay, this is the LeBron James of high school football, then I get it. If someone's going to give you enough to make your family financially independent from day one of college, I get it. But I just don't think quarterback at Ohio State, that's one of the very, very few positions, I think.
And I think you phrased it very well. I think if there's a position in college sports that gets a Brinks truck type of, it's going to be this position. It's not going to be, linebacker or, running back. Those are the dime a dozen positions. It's going to be the marquee position. And like you said, someone's going to get desperate and say, okay, the going rate's $1 million. Let's give them $1.4 million, or something. So that's going to happen. I mean, I don't mean to digress or derail this conversation that way, but yeah.
I think it'll be really interesting. Bill brings up the fact that he's going to Mississippi State. And I think we can all, on the face of it, say here, despite Dak Prescott's wonderful NFL career that causes me great stress, Mississippi State quarterbacks are not. I mean, I would be more than shocked if he goes to Stark Vegas. Now, if some Stark Vegas resident decides, I want Tavien St. Clair more than I want to,
have common sense
business, that's possible.
Yeah, but you're right. That's far-fetched in the outer orbits, but I digressed us to it just because that's going to happen.
It is going to happen.
Yeah,
it's going to happen in Ohio State, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, and Ohio State doesn't have to do it, but that would be a trump card somebody else plays. Tennessee did it. They stole the best quarterback in the country a few years ago that had no business really going to Tennessee, and it was that type of deal. So as St. Clair blows up and he goes on to these campuses and meets money men, so to speak, we shall see.
Yeah, that's a great point. That was California quarterback Nicholas Iamaleava, who I went to watch the first time and was in a 7-7 wearing pajama bottoms. But I digress. Bill, let's take a quick break here at the 17-minute mark, and Bill will come back with more indispensable knowledge. And we're back. Bill, a lanky, explosive wide receiver visited this weekend named Elijah Moore out of Good Counsel High School in the DMV. Good Counsel is in the Washington Catholic Athletic Conference, one of the better athletic conferences in the country for basketball and football. Good Counsel produced recently a wide receiver you may have heard of named Stephon Diggs. What is your thought? He obviously enjoyed his time in Ohio State. He was effusive in his praise in your article.
Yeah, he had a great time, no doubt about it. Elijah Moore is a 6'4" wide receiver with speed. They've got it's to the point where they don't need any specific type of wide receiver because they've got all the types there. They've got the Brandon Ennis slot guy. They've got the Carnell Tate polished guy. They've got the Marvin Harrison type, a little bit of Noah Rogers, a little bit bigger kid. They've got all the different types. Elijah Moore is a 6'4" guy with speed. He would, if he ends up at Ohio State, I guess be the tallest of the group. But, he really just checks all the boxes. I mean, he's an outstanding prospect. He visited Ohio State this weekend, and right now he doesn't have any more official visits scheduled even. Now, that's not to say he won't. He left it open a little bit to maybe scheduling Florida State, maybe getting back to Michigan, but those are maybes at this point. Ohio State's on top. He has no other visits scheduled. He had a fantastic time, thus the crystal ball pick. As long as Ohio State goes all in, I really, really like the Buckeyes' chances on that one, and that I made the pick for him. Now, what does that mean for some other wide receivers like Jeremiah McClellan? I think they can get both of them in the class. If you look at it, counting Brandon Ennis, who just got to Ohio State recently, and was actually helping out with recruiting this past weekend, by the way. But counting him, they've got 11 wide receivers on scholarship. The usual number is 11 or 12. They're going to lose some guys. Everybody knows Marvin Harrison.
Where are they going, Bill?
Emeka Ibuka, could he be gone? Absolutely. And
yes.
There's
They're
others.
They're going. Stop.
So yeah, they've got space.
On this show, we're not going to do that. Emeka Ibuka and Marvin Harrison Jr., barring injury or calamity unforeseen, will be
first round.
They'll need second accountants next year. I'll just
let's say they're going to be first rounders.
Marvin Harrison will be the first receiver off the board, and right now, I'll guarantee you in Vegas, you could not get good odds if you wanted to. Who's be second, because it's going to be Ibuka. Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and even if he's injured, we learned with Jackson Smith and Jigba, that doesn't mean you're not going.
Doesn't matter. Jameson Williams blew his knee out. Remember that? Where'd he go?
Yeah. So I think they will be able to get 4 wide receivers in this class, is my gut feeling right now, and it's definitely going to be 3. There's no doubt in my mind they're taking 3. They've already got 2 5-stars. They're going to take at least 1 more, and I could absolutely see 2 more.
Okay, great. Mark, you have a schedule that requires a monocle for me to look at it because the type on the page is so small. What is your schedule for this week? And if you could point out maybe the guys that have piqued your interest a little bit at each spot, that'd be great.
Yeah. Sort of a rolling start, Toledo the other night, and then Youngstown State tonight. So I got a home game. I'll be in town tonight, and it's a great night for me to see the local kids in town. The big timers probably aren't going to be working out at Youngstown State tonight, but I'll see young kids in the future. Tomorrow night is the Build a Bridge camp up in Cleveland, Ohio. Kari Hooks and the Browns and some of the organizations up there have put on a great camp for $20, and it's largely a D2, D3 academic camp. There'll be some bigger schools there, but these guys are really serious about helping that next rung of players that's not the star. And I kind of have a bleeding heart for that. That these guys are doing right by kids, and I think they have 50 or 60 colleges committed from the D2s and D3s. So for $20, if that's your level, that's a big time camp. So I always support that.
Mark, that's where their next GM is coming from.
You very well could be. Yes. And then Wednesday is Michigan or Youngstown State. I am not exactly sure which Michigan camp is going to be their best, but I may be up there that day. Thursday's Ohio State. Bill and I will both be there. It's their first camp of the year. And Thursday night is also the Scouting Ohio MVCA All-Star game here in Youngstown. So throwing a All-Star game to that schedule. Friday, I will be at the University of Akron Friday Night Lights camp. And then Sunday is the Pitt camp. So through that week, I know we have another podcast coming this week. I'll probably turn around at my desk a few times and start reading off names. But at Toledo, I saw a bunch of tight ends that looked really good, underclassmen from Elder and some other places. So much like a Ryan Montgomery, I saw him at the Toledo camp as an 8th grader. Tavien St. Clair, saw him as a sophomore freshman working out at that camp. So a lot of these other camps provide fruit for me that eventually comes up, into the mainstream.
Some good points here. My guy John Schultz backs me up in terms of quarterbacks making cash. J.J. McCarthy is making well into 7 figures this year. Yeah, C.J. did quite well. Different pay scale. I would say the only other guy who's possibly doing that well right now at Ohio State, maybe Marvin Harrison Jr., and deservedly so. All right, Bill. Grant Nicol, I wonder if he's related to Mandy. Long story inside. Did the recent official visit move the needle with Dominic McKinley? Who is he, and why should we be interested, William?
Well, I think it did move the needle a little bit, at least. And Dominic McKinley is a defensive lineman from Louisiana, 5-star, I might add, 6'5", about 290. Great player. Had 86 tackles, if I remember right, and 10 sacks as a junior. And he did make his official visit to Ohio State this weekend, and he got to hang out with a couple Texas guys. Nigel Smith, did make his official visit to Ohio State this weekend, and so did Daniel Cruz. So, him getting to hang out with the two guys from Texas, I think, was a good thing because both are highly interested in Ohio State. In the case of Nigel Smith, it was his 5th visit to Ohio State this past weekend. Shows a little interest. They always say, follow the visits. Well, Nigel Smith has made them. So I think that was good that even though Dominic is from Louisiana, he got to hang out with those Texas guys. Now, having said that it moved the needle some, I know where he's going to visit in the next few weeks, and it's not going to be easy for Ohio State to remain with the needle move because I think the needle could move again. Dominic is going to visit Texas A&M this weekend. He has Oklahoma the following weekend, and then after that he has Texas June 23rd. The kid also is less than a 2-hour drive away from LSU. How easy is it to go in and beat LSU for a kid in their backyard, so to speak? So there's going to be a lot of chances for that needle to move again. So that would be my worry, I guess you'd say, if I were Ohio State.
Now, there's a guy whose NIL needle will move away from Ohio State and to somewhere else, Mark. That to me is the kind of guy. You are not going in and getting a guy from Houston too close to New Orleans. That's a dead song. I'm just saying, from that area, that ain't happening, man. I've held out for that. There was Dwayne and I used to do shows upon shows upon shows about 315-pound guys from below the Mason-Dixon line, and it never ever happened. I mean, seriously, and until they came here after they transferred, then they weren't any good.
I had a conversation at a camp with a coach, and when I said that about the quarterback getting a bag dropped on him, that was a quote from a college coach.
Okay.
Like they were joking around, but this coach wasn't at the biggest program, and he was joking around like, I'm just going to drop a bag on him. And I'm trying to portray to the viewers that there's a mentality of coaches at the middle rung of schools out there that, you know what? You guys have been stepping on us for years, and we can't usually get players like that. But you know what? I can drop a bag on that dude now, and your colors don't matter, was kind of his point to the bigger schools. It was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. It's kind of like these guys in the middle rung of coaching can make a name for themselves just the way Tennessee did. Alex Golesh is a head coach at down in Florida now because of landing that quarterback and having a big year down there. And these guys are capitalizing on taking those type of players, and it's giving them run with the recruiting sites. They get recruiting rankings and picked as recruiter of the year. And so they land a player like that. All of a sudden, they're a hot recruiter, and they just got to drop a bag on someone. So I know I just digressed that I
agree.
So, but that came directly from a college coach who was kind of joking. When he said it, I was laughing, and I'm thinking that is his only shot to get that player is to literally hand over the duffel bag full of cash at the visit and say, here's what we got for you. And I just don't know how that plays in real life because, Dan, you drop a bag of cash on me, I'll be on the Michigan podcast tomorrow morning, and I'll be wearing maize and blue. And that's just the way life works. And I just, and until you see that bag of cash, all relevant decisions and your morals and all those things are never tested. We usually don't get tested as human beings to our true morals with a bag of cash like that. And I guess my cynical nature is coming through, and people may start to see me as more cynical. But yeah, I just think in this day and age, we haven't seen the true wild, wild west of NIL, and this is not an NIL podcast. So sorry.
Bill, I'll let you go 1 sec. Here's my thing. Tennessee, though, has won a national championship. Peyton Manning went there. Yes, to propel yourself from Tennessee back into a higher level, I'm with you. What I want to see is, and I think what you're saying is, someone – look, I'm going to use names here. This is completely hypothetical. I am not saying I know anything. Okay. Don't aggregate this or whatever people do with what we say here. But hypothetically, let's say –
I don't want to make fun of a mid-range college and say that you're mid-range.
A good example. Let's use Toledo and Tavien St. Clair because you already used them.
Okay.
Let's say there's a Toledo
alum who invented an LCD screen that's got billions. Yeah.
And
the Sam Boone Pickens or whoever.
or his brother T-Boone Pickens, but I digress.
Yeah.
So let's say that happens and they offer him. Then I think it's possible. And then you're looking at Toledo, having a MAC level or, elite level quarterback with some individual TV time and stuff like that. I get all that, but I got to see that one to believe it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty far down the trough, but yeah.
It could happen.
This conversation reminds me of a conversation I had yesterday with a recruit. I talked to recruits not only that visited Ohio State this past weekend, but I also talked to kids that Ohio State is recruiting that visited other schools this past weekend. See what happened there. So I'm talking to one recruit, and he just flat out said, "I'm going to take my visits because I want to see what each school, what they've got for me." What he's talking about, and it was
facilities, Bill. He wants great facilities.
Yeah, it was not. He wants to see what they've got for him because when he gets to these visits, then they put out the NIL offer and say, "Here's how much we've got for you." And he wasn't really trying to hide anything. He wants to see what each school is going to have for him when he makes the visits, and that's a big, big part of his visits. And a lot of guys are that way. Not all of them, but a lot of them are that way.
I think it'd be fun if Bill just started reporting the offers from each school if you could get it out of these kids. And I don't think these kids are ever going to report it to us or report it to anybody. It's all going to be, hush hush and rumored to be, and that's interesting.
I wouldn't put anything past this becoming so routine that eventually the guy's like 5 stars, cost $1.6 million.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that graphic.
10 years from now, you're talking about streamlining a process. Nothing would surprise me. All right, we got to end this show. We go forever. I am out. I will be gone for a week. Dave Biddle will be at the helm. You'll see these guys back on Thursday. Hope you have stuff to do between now and then. Have a good one, Bucknutters.